Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Perfectly Framed by Ruth J. Hartman, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. When a cancellation from a black and white tuxedo's cat's mom gave me a break in my cat grooming schedule at Fabulous Felines, I took the opportunity to visit my friend Evan at his photography studio. He'd phoned earlier saying he had proofs of kitty pictures he'd taken for some of my clients. Couldn't wait to check them out. And who better to take along with me than my own two felines? The tug came from my fingers. One of my cats, Jasper, was pulling against his harness ready to run. Percival, his adoptive brother, was finally becoming alert after his long nap. He yawned, licked his paw, then looked up at me as if to say, "Okay, let's do this." The short walk had us there in no time, even with both cats feeling the need to sniff, rub against, or paw at everything that was at their eye level. That was a lot of things. Grass, pebbles, park benches, and cracks in the sidewalk. Nothing was safe from wet kitty noses and twitchy whiskers. When I opened the door to Evan Lake's photography studio, I blinked, always forgetting how dim he kept his maiden, with small spotlights positioned so that his work was beautifully on display and caught the admirer's attention. When my vision adjusted to the low light, a movement caught my eye. It was Evan, who stood near an open doorway to his darkroom. "Hi, Evan." I waited. He didn't answer. His usual wide grin had been replaced with a scrunched brow and glassy looking eyes, as if he couldn't focus. Something was wrong. He stepped closer. "Evan, are you all right?" He jerked. Did I startle him? Maybe he hadn't heard me come in, although that seemed odd considering the loud bell on the front door and the sound of my voice. "Oh, Molly?" he asked, like he wasn't quite sure who I might be. Wow, he really was out. Concerned, I reached out and touched his arm. "Are you ill? Can I help you?" He shook his head slowly. I, his throat moved as he swallowed. It's, maybe he'd gotten some bad news or didn't feel well. What happened? Do you, in there?" he whispered, his voice raspy. "What is it?" Now I was really worried. What had I walked into? Evan pointed toward the open doorway. "Something is in there?" I asked. "An animal gotten in overnight and destroyed his photos? Or maybe a recent rain caused a roof leak and ruined his beautiful work? What a terrible loss that would be." "No, someone," he said. He took in a quick gulp of air. "Is he having trouble breathing? Maybe I should take him to see the local doctor." "Evan, do you need to sit down?" I pointed to a grouping of chairs set against his front wall. He shook his head, causing strands of his light-colored hair to brush against his forehead. "Somebody," shivered, "is in there." So we were back to a person in this dark room, but I wonder where they're coming out. Um, is it a customer? Who grabbed my free hand, something he'd never done before, and towed me behind him into the room. I nearly stumbled as he tugged me harder. What was going on there? Squinted against the bright lights, such a change from the dim front area. In here, the lights were ablaze, making the term darkroom seem inaccurate. Percival and Jasper's leashes bounced on my other hand as the cats trotted behind me, the shrill sound of their claws scraping against the wood floor planks, making me shiver. Evan dropped my hand, then pointed again, this time to his right and toward the floor. What was going on? Was there an injured or ill customer back here? "Evan, I don't Right there." I edged closer and then I saw it, or should I say, saw her, and gasped. Agnes Temple, a woman in her early 60s who was a high school teacher, lay in a crumpled heap beside a counter filled with bins of finished photographs. The gray cotton pantsuit, normally without wrinkle or blemish, had a dark stain on the shoulder and a tiny rip at the sleeve. A large bottle of something I couldn't identify lay near her head. Jasper strained against his harness, obviously wanting to get closer, but I gently tucked him back. Percival stared at the body, whispers twitching, stayed parked next to my feet. My mouth went dry and I swallowed. "What happened?" Evan shook his head. "I don't know. I mean, she was here when I opened up a few minutes ago." Glanced down to make sure the kitties were still sitting at my feet. This wouldn't be a good time for them to explore. Even though they were on leashes, they were sneaky enough to occasionally escape and go their way. Okay, have you called the sheriff? No, I guess it hadn't sunk in what I was seeing. I only just found her when you walked in. I don't understand. How did she get in here? And what happened to her? He rubbed his forehead. Poor guy was obviously going in shock. I doubted his thoughts were making much sense right now. Want me to call him for you? He nodded. Yes, if you don't mind. I don't seem to be able to think clearly. Believe me, I understand. After having found one of my pet parents in a similar state a few months ago, I remembered the feeling of shock, like my mind and body were sluggish, refusing to work properly. It had taken a while for me to have coherent thoughts afterward. I dialed 911. The sheriff's assistant, Betsy Jones, answered. Sheriff's office, how may I help you? I kept a watchful eye on Evan as I spoke, hoping he wouldn't keel over right next to me. Hey, Betsy, it's Molly Stewart. I heard a smile in her voice when she said, Hi, Molly, how are you? Well, there's been an incident at Evan Lake's studio, and long story short, Agnes Temple is dead. Silence came from the other end of the line. Then Betsy said, let me alert Sheriff King. He'll be there as soon as he can. Thank you. I ended the call, frowning at the phone. Betsy was normally so efficient, so professional in doing her job for the sheriff. Maybe I'd caught her on a bad day, although she sounded cheery enough when I'd first called. She'd been friends with the deceased. I didn't know of any connection between them, but in a small town, it was hard to tell. So many citizens were related or had a past history, and the details came out later on. Like when somebody turned out dead, that always showed skeletons out of closets. Isn't the sheriff on his way? Evan asked, his face pale and hands shaking. Placed my phone back inside the purse hanging from a strap on my shoulder. Yes, Betsy said he'd be here as soon as he could. Evan nodded, but his pupils were dilated. A sheen of sweat showed on his face. Hey, he said, grabbing his hand as he'd done mine a few months earlier. Why don't we go and wait outside? Maybe get some fresh air. Still be in the same situation, but at least he wouldn't have to look at Agnes in her current state for long. Although from what I'd gone through, that image would play again and again, I knew it's going to put something. Evan blinked. Air, yes. Air is good. He took a step and faltered, grabbing onto my support. It wasn't every day someone discovered a body in the place. While I've been speaking to Evan, the cats had sidled closer to Agnes. Though they couldn't touch her because of the leashes, both had their necks stretched out, nostrils flaring as they tried to take in all this strange new smells. Jasper reached out his paw, but contacted only air. Percival didn't bother with trying to touch Agnes. Instead, he let out a long, loud hiss at Evan's body. Yeah, kitty, that old shower. Agnes hadn't been a nice woman. Even though Percival hadn't known her personally, he must have sensed she hadn't been a human he would have liked. Or maybe he hissed simply because she was no longer breathing and it freaked him out. I never knew the cats. Once Evan had found his sea legs and didn't seem as wobbly or confused when he headed out to the door. Percival came willingly, but Jasper would convince him with a gentle tug of the leash. Finally, we all stepped aside. Good morning, came from behind us. We jumped and turned, relieved to see Jillian Wells, my best friend. Hey, I said, I told him to head toward Evan. What's going on? Jillian frowned in concern, pushing her long hair over one shoulder. Then she placed both hands on hips, giving her signature stern look she'd perfected after years of scolding wayward library patrons. Waiting until two women passed by us on the sidewalk, I leaned closer to Jillian and whispered, Evan just found a body in the... A body? She screeched. That's so real. I whispered, not wanting anyone else passing by to know about the death before the sheriff got here. It's so... Who? Agnes Temple. Jillian's mouth dropped open. Just spoke to her yesterday. She came into the library to get some information on... She eyed Evan and clammed up. On what? I asked. She shook her head, causing a long bowling to dance. I'll tell you later. What did she want to tell me about it? I looked in his direction, but he wasn't paying attention. Still appearing to be fuddled and lost. Did he even notice we were talking about him? I tugged her to one side a few feet away. What's going on? She glanced at Evan and seemed to make a decision when whispered. Agnes was in the library a couple of days ago. She asked for help using the internet and one of the computers. Okay, so doesn't sound too strange. Some of our senior townspeople often needed assistance with the newer technology at the library. What's strange was the subject matter she looked up. She typed in Evan's name. My friend, how would she do that? They know each other, couldn't she just have asked them what she wanted to know? Julian shrugged. Sure, I wondered that too, but once she had what she needed, she told me in no uncertain terms to go away. Couldn't very well stand there snooping. Her eyebrows lowered. Well, could have, but honestly, that woman scares me a little. You know, I don't scare easily. I guess she's not so scary anymore. Glanced over at Agnes's still. No, I guess not. Julian stared at Evan for a few seconds, then at me, shook her head, and let out a sigh. Without warning, Evan let out a loud gasp, headed our direction, and collapsed right into Julian. She was quick enough to wrap her arms around him before he sunk to the sidewalk. My eyes widened as I rushed to help her hold him up. The adrenaline after finding Agnes on his floor appeared to have left him very weak. Siren wailed as it turned the corner and headed our direction. Naturally, it got everyone's attention who was walking nearby, and also those who were working or doing business in surrounding buildings. Office and shop doors opened as people spilled out to see what the latest excitement was. In a small town, anything happening that was different was bound to add excitement to an otherwise quiet day. Sheriff Lawrence King opened his car door and stepped out, giving a wave to his impromptu audience, as if he were some sort of celebrity. When I glanced at Jillian, I caught him in the middle of an eye roll. Hadn't given one, but wanted to. The sheriff rubbed me the wrong way. But that might be due to his hounding me during the previous murder when he all but accused my Uncle Russ of doing it. Thank goodness the real killer was apprehended and I would have spared any of that lawfulness. Aside from that, Sheriff King liked to ridicule my profession, a mobile cat groomer, as if what I did for a living wasn't valuable or worthwhile. I had lots of kitties and their pet parents who would stand behind me and give their support. Some of them might even purr. The sheriff adjusted his hat, hitched up his pants, and strolled over to us. He eyed us one by one. Evan, Jillian, Molly. He glanced down and let out a small gasp, taking 2 steps backward. One more step and he would have tipped off the sidewalk and ended up on the street in a tan polyester lump. Tiny part of me wished, no, I don't like noise. Besides, I knew the reason for this gasp and partial retreat. It was due to my little furry friends who were at the moment staring up at the sheriff. In the past, his actions made it clear he not only didn't like cats, but was afraid of them. After gaining his composure, the sheriff, while avoiding glancing down again, said, "What's the emergency here?" Betsy said something about a body. His voice was loud enough. It carried down the sidewalk and across the street. A collective gasp sounded before pointing and whispering took over from those watching the developing spectacle. I shook my head, but what had I expected? Whitewater Valley liked spicy news, and it didn't get spicier than murder. Wait, how did I know Agnes hadn't died accidentally? Was it because her body was crumpled in such an unnatural position that she bled from a wound on her head? But the way she was lying, it hadn't appeared she'd fallen against anything to cause her injury. But mainly it was because having previously discovered one of my pet parents' murder in this garden, I had the same strange vibe I had that day. Yep, I felt it in my bones. Agnes had been murdered. Evan was in some sort of stupor at the moment, unable to communicate. Jillian watched him. Was she wondering if he'd fall on her again? Apparently it was up to me to answer the sheriff. "You heard right, Sheriff," I said. "There's a body in the photography studio." Tilted my head toward the front door. "Who is it?" he asked. Betsy wouldn't say. She just turned red and refused to look at me. Strange girl. The sheriff had no right to call me the most strange. "Why don't we go inside?" I eyed the growing crowd. "It looks like we're attracting a lot of attention." I didn't add that him yelling out about a dead body was a partial catalyst for the gathering, and also his use of car sirens. His frown told me he didn't like me making suggestions as to what he should do, but I didn't care. The sooner this was over, the better. I glanced at Evan, who was indeed leaning heavily on Jillian again. She had held him tight against her, her expression of concern focused on his face. Sheriff King and I stepped inside and I motioned for him to follow me to the darkroom. "She's in here," he said. "She?" He adjusted his hat, which had gone askew. "Yep, and pointed toward the body. Agnes Temple. His eyes bulged out. Agnes? He quickly regained his composure and bent over to see the body. He reached into his shirt pocket for a pair of gloves and put them on. He touched her neck, took in her immediate surroundings, clicked some pictures with his phone, then made a phone call. I could make out from his end of the conversation that he was speaking to Tyson Berry, our local funeral director, who doubled as our medical examiner. Tyson will be here soon, he said. Until then, why don't you tell me what you know about all of this? His expression was one of judgment, as if I had something to do with how Agnes ended up here for this pantsuit wearing mackerel. Hey, I said, I didn't have anything to do with what happened to her. Seems like you're protesting awfully loud for someone who's in the car. I hate free hand landed on my hip. Let's not go down that road again. What road would that be? His mouth formed into a smirk. He knew very well I referred to Whitewater Valley's previous murder. One where you automatically assume that I or someone close to committed murder, I said. Close to? He turned his head toward the doorway. Yeah, you're really tight with the other girlie, the librarian, huh? Girlie. Honestly, the man was the previous school controller. Jillian Wells is a close friend, yes. And the guy who runs this place, he pointed his thumb toward the entrance. You know his name is Evan Lakes. He shrugged. Doesn't matter what his name is. All I care about is finding who did this. I need to speak to both of them. We'll invite them to join us, why don't you? Glanced toward the doorway to the main area. If I wanted to get to the bottom of Agnes's murder, what choice did I have? Might as well get the awfulness over with.